They Were the Last Resort, Part 9, by Hylian Hero 71. September 19, 2034, UHS Unyielding Courage, in synchronous orbit above Freedom's Triumph. Logan smiled. Today was going to be a good day. One to remember, that's for sure, as he stared out the window of the captain's room over the worlds below. It had once been the jewel of the Alliance, a planet of beauty, now reduced to ashes. Humanity and the hybrid forces had made sure of that. He thought about the events of the last 6 months, something that for the most part had gone by in a blur. After the Battle of Seoul, Logan's forces had joined Parker at the encirclement lines before they launched an all-out offensive into Alliance space. Johnson managed to create an alliance between humanity and the hybrid forces fighting for their freedom across Alliance space, and the human fleet was intent on assisting them. Between the New Order, humanity, and a functional rebellion in the way of the hybrids, the Alliance was unable to offer serious organized resistance to the human forces, and they took planet after planet in quick succession, like taking candy from a baby, Parker had remarked. Logan didn't usually consider himself very vengeful, but even he had to admit the experience of tearing through Alliance space had been downright cathartic. Morale among human forces was higher than it had ever been, and they were ready to see it through to the end. Of course there had been losses, battles in which human forces overextended, or when Alliance forces managed to actually combine enough to significantly resist. Many humans were dead or wounded, even if they took 100 of the enemy for each of their own losses. The intelligence wing had performed admirably during the invasion. The records of what had really happened to Earth, as well as the recording of an Alliance general turning down a chance for peace, were leaked to the civilians, and did wonders against the morale of the Alliance populace. Before the invasion, most Alliance citizens had never seen a human, and knew little more about them unless they served in the war. As the information of the Alliance's crimes slowly came to light, public opinion began to sour against the human war, with some even questioning whether the Alliance should exist. But when human occupation forces met alien civilians, it was a far more amicable event than either side expected. Faced with the truth of the Alliance's actions regarding humanity, small factions turned against the government, growing in membership with each world humanity took. In some cases, the more pacifistic member species of the Alliance declared independence, disgusted with the treatment of humanity and how it had been hidden. Though the peace with the New Order was tenuous, Logan and the others took care to keep out of their way, while also making sure to cut them off from further invading Alliance territory as possible. They received a few empty threats, but clearly the bloody nose the Order had taken in Seoul had left them not keen to pick a fight with humanity. Soon humanity had pressed hundreds upon hundreds of light years into Alliance space, and was laying siege to the core worlds. Worlds that hadn't seen war in centuries, not even against the Stellar Imperium. Humanity fought alongside the hybrids and rebels, making a brutally efficient force in the trenches. And here he stood, having nearly conquered the capital planet of the entire Alliance, the final nail in his coffin. It would be any minute now. Any minute, he would receive what he was waiting for. His terminal pinged. He sat down, forcing himself into a more professional look. Even if it had been easier than anticipated, humanity was ready for the war to end. The transmission originated from a bunker on the planet's surface and carried an Alliance signature. Good. Finally, he said to himself, answering the call. Hello? Is the transmission operable? An alien asked, their feed and audio cutting in and out, the video feed spotty. Despite the poor quality, Logan knew who he was speaking with. So Marut, Prime Minister of the Alliance. Yes, I'm receiving you clearly, Minister, Logan said, leaning back as he poured himself a drink. Perk of being an admiral was that no one would get on his ass for a little celebratory drink at a time like this. To what do I owe the pleasure? You know why I made this call, Soam said defeatedly, as the boom of an artillery shell rocked his bunker, just falling on him and his screen. I must admit that things have gone remarkably poorly. Yes, Minister. I would say they have, Logan agreed, taking a sip from his glass. I don't know how it came to this, Soam said sadly. He had been Minister of the Alliance for near on 50 years, one of the few remaining men on humanity's list regarding the destruction of Earth, along with his top military brass. "It's simple, really," Logan said, savoring the moment. He harbored no sympathy for this man, and he showed it willingly. "You chose war. You're losing. You thought us weak, barbaric, easily controllable. That was wrong. You thought the same of your hybrids. Again, you were wrong." Soam sighed deeply, staring at the floor as his bunker quaked. "So much death. So much destruction. For what?" "Nothing." "Again, on that we agree," Logan said. "It is a damn shame it took so many months and lives for you to learn this." "There is not much time now. Your Marines have taken the Capitol building and are nearing my bunker." "I would say that they are," Logan agreed. Looking at the maps, 3 whole battalions had attacked the Capitol, and were indeed very near. He'd personally ordered them not to harm the minister, but he didn't need to know that. For someone this important, a trial would be better than a summary execution. That is why I called you. I think in the interest of protecting my people from further bloodshed, it is time for the Alliance to surrender," Soam said. "Good," Logan announced, downing the rest of his drink in one gulp. "Surrender to my Marines, and I will make sure that none of them harm you or your soldiers. Your men will be taken as prisoners of war, and you will be taken to my ship to sign the treaty." I understand," Soam said, clearly in disbelief at what was happening. "I hope you do," Logan said sternly as he cut the transmission. 8 hours later, Shuttle Bay 01, UHS Unyielding Courage. "With this signing, we can finally end this bleeding and bring peace once more," Admiral Parker announced, as Soam and the Alliance generals added their signatures to the instrument of surrender, heads hanging in shame. Logan stood nearby, glad he wasn't speaking. He didn't feel like getting up in front of so many cameras and people. He and Parker had run a bet. If he didn't capture the planet before October, he'd speak. Fortunately, he had won. As he looked at the crowd of watchers on, he wondered what this peace could bring. But as Soam and his generals stood up from the table and were escorted to their cells, Logan knew it would be better. There would be a trial, no doubt resulting in a guilty verdict. He was curious just how they would get a noose around the alien necks. He added his signature of acceptance to the instrument of surrender absent-mindedly. All he wanted to do was go home. But something told him that dealing with a sudden and massive power vacuum would be his problem to solve. The surrender of the Alliance was absolutely unconditional, just as Logan had demanded months before. The empire of the Alliance would be shattered, its constituent species made into individual independent nations. Those species that had resisted humanity to the end would be occupied, until humanity was sure they were no longer a threat. Some proposed reprisals for Earth on ex-Alliance worlds, but these fringe elements were not heeded, as humanity had no interest in such barbaric policies. Everyone responsible was already dead, so why continue the killing? Humanity seized enough territory to rival the New Order, quickly reorganizing into the United Systems of Humanity, with Earth as the capital. Most of the nations formed from the corpse of the Alliance aligned themselves with humanity, even if humans were prone to xenophobia or other unsavory behavior. They at least were fond of self-government. The Prime Minister of the Alliance, along with many other surviving members of government involved in the destruction of Earth, were judged, convicted, and executed by the courts of humanity. Some questioned whether it was right for humanity to execute so many, but none questioned it when reminded of the horrors done to them by the Alliance. Humanity delivered a proper homeworld to the hybrids, near enough to Earth that their already close friendship could be kept up. Using the data found in the research facilities, they were able to create hybrid females and allow them to become a fully functional race once freed from the pathogen implants. Soon, the hybrids enthusiastically became the first alien species to join the USH. The New Order would in the end be unable to contest these events. They took the systems that they could from the remains of the Alliance, but humanity had taken the lion's share, and was guarding it zealously. Using the technology from the Alliance, humanity would rapidly become the premier galactic power, their only limiting factor being their small yet rapidly growing population, which was augmented by the alien species flocking to the human banner. Though the human race was an unknown quantity to most, after some time beneath human rule, many acknowledged that it was superior to the Alliance. They took care not to meddle too much in local affairs, and humans were more prone to treat others as equals instead of tools. Admiral Logan Wayne would retire from the military a few years after the war, though his service was not done, as he would be elected the first president of the USH soon after. His term was considered one of a good leader, in which he established peaceful and productive relationships with many species, and inducted several into the USH itself. Earth would soon be terraformed completely, and he would return to his homeland of North America once his term was up, living quietly in the Great Plains. Humanity was their last resort. Since the war, I have learned of a human phrase based on myth: Pandora's box. The concept is of something that you can unleash, but can never regain your control over. Perhaps humanity is best described by this. Their ways were an unknown quantity. Some think of them a violent, contemptible species. Indeed, knowing what happened to them, it is a wonder they did not become so. The point is wrong, however. Humanity has shown my kind nothing but kindness and respect. None can know how the stars will look under their leadership, but nonetheless, I know that they shall lead well. Regnier Tran, hybrid, veteran historian of the Human Alliance War. Excerpted from his memoir, The Last Resorts, Humanity and the Hybrids, A History of the Human Alliance War.